Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project with your host Mick Spears. We bring you thought-provoking guests and topics every week to challenge your thinking about leadership. Our aim is to help you become the leader that you wish you always had as we learn together and lead together. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm greatly honoured today to be joined by Nicole Greer. Nicole is the CEO and founder of an organisation called Build a Vibrant Culture. And as you can imagine, that's what we're going to talk about today. She helps organisations to be the people that they can be through building amazing cultures, building vibrant lives, building vibrant teams, and building that vibrant culture. So without any further ado, Nicole, please do say hello to the audience. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and what led you into this work where you focus so heavily on culture today.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Nicole Greer, and I am delighted to be with you today. And so like many of you, you may have had to just get started in life. So when I was about 17 years old, I moved out of the house because I thought that would be better. And so I moved out of the house and I got into the restaurant business, and the restaurant business was so good to a young 17-year-old girl. I ended up being a front of the house manager, which is really a glorified hostess, but I did very well. I had a lot of energy. And before you know it, I was running my own stores, and I found my way to North Carolina where I live today. And I ran Applebee's, and I was their training director. And at one point they were opening stores all over the state of North Carolina, and I was part of that. And I thoroughly loved it. So I trained everybody from the dishwasher to the waitress to, the folks that were tending bar. And so that was such a good business for me. And one day I had this wonderful thing happen to me. A woman named Nancy Freeman came into my restaurant, and she gave me her business card, and she was like, call me. And I was like, okay. And so I was very young and naive. And so I called her up, but this is back in the days before email. I'm like, hello, I'm Nicole. You gave me your card. And she goes, I remember you. And she said, I love the way that you were running all around that restaurant, and you were smiling and having a good time waiting on people and taking care of people. I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, I think you'd be very good in the apartment business. And so I got into multifamily housing, and I was in it for 15 years, and I ended up being the training director. And so I just had these wonderful opportunities to go to multiple locations. Many organizations have one site, two site, three sites. And when I worked for Summit Properties, they had over 80 apartment communities, and I was responsible for training managers and leasing agents. And I just know that the training and the onboarding and the recruiting and the life cycle of employees is huge to developing a vibrant culture. And so that's kind of my background. And then around 2007, I decided to start my own company.
Very good. All right. So there's lots of stuff there already that we can get into, and we're seeing some of those key elements there. I want to go back to those restaurant days. Did you have a mentor that showed you that this is what it's all about, or did this come naturally to you? That's my first question for you.
Well, I would say that I did have a mentor in my father. My father was an interesting fella. I love him to death, but he was a little half crazy. But I watched him work many days of my life. So back in the day, we didn't really have babysitters. It was like, parents figured it out. And one of the things my father did is he worked in retail, and then he also worked in the country club management business. So when I was a little girl on Saturdays, there's no school. He would just put me in the car and take me to work. And I used to sit in the back room of the Franklin Simon retail store, which was a lovely boutique. It was beautiful. So this was back in the day when retail people came up to you, they waited on you hand and foot, and they served you something cold to drink while you were shopping. It was very bougie. And so I watched my dad move inside of this retail establishment called Franklin Simon. And I just learned by watching, and all the women and the men that worked for him inside that store. So what a great experience for a very young girl. I think I was like 8, 9, 10. And then eventually I got old enough, I became what they call a latchkey kid. I literally had like a key around my neck, and I would just come and go and let myself in and out of the house because my daddy raised me by himself. And then when I was in high school, he was doing country club management. And so again, a very high-end organization. He worked for the Shaniqua Country Club up in Wisconsin, and then the Toledo Country Club in Ohio. And both of those were very high-end, expensive places to join. And he would have me and my girlfriends, we would all go and we would work like weddings and bar mitzvahs and birthday parties and special events. And so I just kind of learned how to move in and out of places and, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and may I help you and may I serve you? And so there's just this kind of thing where I watched and I learned because I was in these two places as a very young person. So I have a huge like customer service bent, because my dad just really took great care of people for a very long time.
So I'm going to borrow some words from a good friend of mine here, Justin Sires. He always tells me people do what they see. And what I'm hearing here is that you had a great role model in your father, and that started to cultivate in you what you would go on to be in terms of that customer service ethic that you have there, that environment that you wanted to create as you get into restaurant management and then later on into what we would call, I guess, strata management. I think you called it multi-family and environment. So yeah, very interesting. Two questions here. I want us one at a time. What did you learn about yourself when you stepped into front of office or front of the restaurant? What did you learn about yourself through those days?
I learned that putting out positive energy returns positive energy. So that's a huge aha for people. So, here's the thing. If you smile at people and you give them good service, you know what they do? They tip you. They thank you. It creates this wonderful environment, right? And so I learned right out of the gate that the energy that, I kind of was blessed with at birth, that it is a very powerful force. And so being friendly and outgoing, I think, is also important. So that's the thing that I learned the most. And that I could get people to help me if I kept the environment positive. So I think being a positive influence.
So there's little doubt, it doesn't always work, but there's little doubt that smiles generate more smiles. So I get that. One thing I want to challenge is how do you make sure it's authentic? And let me explain that a little bit. I've traveled through the US a lot, and the US is I'm going to call it a service-based culture. You generally get pretty good service, but I have to be honest, and sometimes I get this little niggle in my mind as to, is this person really this happy and this pleasant all the time? Or is this an act to get the very tips that you're talking about? Sometimes it doesn't come across as authentic. Where's the line there between making sure that it's truly authentic? I'm here to serve you and have a wonderful day and we're going to have a great time together. Thank you for coming to my restaurant. I'm going to make this experience great for you and for me, versus I'm just putting on an act because I need you to tip me because I rely on tips.
Right. Yeah. So I think if you're asking how a person does that, how do I authentically be positive? How do I authentically do this? Really, I think this is a spiritual thing. And that might be a weird answer, but, I can get training in my brain, right? When you go to the table, say hello, smile, then get them what they want and check back to see if they need anything else. And, all the things that are required to give good service, in a restaurant setting. But, here's the thing. After you do something for a while, you learn it in your brain, but then I think at some point it drops down in your heart, like you want to help people, and it happens over time. And some people are very customer service driven and other people are not customer service driven, because I've worked with them and I've had to let people like that go. But at the end of the day, if you have a heart for people, if you care about humanity, it's very easy to give good service. And then I think at some point it gets in your belly, or dare I say this, it gets in your soul. And it's who you are. And that's the part that you're asking me about, is how do I know it's real? Because the person will emote it. It will feel right instead of feeling trumped up. So you were saying you traveled in America. I'm curious, have you been to Chick-fil-A?
Yes, I have. I always had a good experience there, actually. Yeah.
And I will tell you why, is because they hire people very intentionally who have a heart and a soul for quality service. And so when they go there, every single one of those kids and adults that work there, they all seem younger and younger to me, Mick. All these kids and adults, they're like, my pleasure. And it never feels like, oh, they have to say that. I mean, those are people who truly do care. And, what I would call a vibrant employee, somebody who's living and breathing the philosophy of the organization. Now we have another restaurant here in America that is wonderful. It's my husband's favorite restaurant. If I ask him where are we going to go, he wants to go to Moe's Southwest Grill. Well, when you walk in the door of Moe's, the whole team is supposed to go, welcome to Moe's. Now, sometimes you walk in and it feels fantastic. It's like the whole team is having so much fun. They're like, yeah, oh, here comes another one. Welcome to Moe's. And then other places you go, they're like, welcome to Moe's.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels forced.
Right. So I think it's a difference in the leader.
Okay, so I want to unpack that a little bit then now. You as a customer now, so you've grown up with all of that. When you do go out with your husband now and you either get great service or bad service or somewhere in between, are you able to switch this off and just be a customer, or are you always going, like, yeah, tell me more. How's that experience for you?
Well, I just look at it like, could you tell me the name of the manager? Could you tell me the name of the district manager for this place? I'd like to send him a letter. Maybe you need some customer service training. But I will tell you, my kids who are 30 and 23, they have adopted this from their mother. So they go places and they're like, oh my gosh, the service is terrible. Or, the service was fantastic. So if you really want to dial it in, it's really about noticing and being excellent, And so my kids, when they do things excellently, especially in terms of customer service, because they've heard their mother's dialogue, like you're saying, every time we've gone somewhere. And I would tell my children, see how he just did that, or see how that just happened? Don't do that. This is how you do it. So I think training is a huge part of it.
All right. I promised there was two things I wanted to unpack earlier. And the second one now is we spoke about what did you learn about yourself. Now I want to know, what did you learn about the human condition from serving all of those people, whether it be in restaurants or later in strata management? What did you learn about people?
Oh, that is such a great question. And I love how you termed that the human condition. So I'm actually going to write that down because maybe we could talk about another part of the human condition if you want to. So people, we never know what's going on with them. And you have to be so careful to assume anything. You have to be very good at asking questions. And then if you ask a question, you better darn well be ready to listen. And so I think that number one, more than anything, people want to be loved and they want to be listened to and they want to be taken care of. So even if you have a terrible person in front of you who's acting, not so great, or, excuse my language, like a jerk, I don't know why they're doing that. I don't know why they're behaving like a jerk, but here's what I do know. It's not personal. I didn't do anything to them. At the end of the day, I'm just here to serve. Now, if I can take the high road, which is, something my grandma Mert would say, take the high road, and I just love them anyways, I can almost turn people around. I've had people in front of me where they're just coming at me and I just sat there and I listened. And we all know this from, if any of you have ever taken sales courses, you just listen to people if they're upset until you diffuse them. That's how we say it. We diffuse them and people calm down. And then they're like, I didn't mean to yell at you. And you're like, I know. What can I do for you? So it's just this idea that there's probably this wounded person in front of you. And so just be the person that helps heal them.
I do want to unpack that a little bit more, and that's the living embodiment of some research that Brendan Burchard did, by the way, around relationships. This one's about relationships. His advice was, if you're in a loving relationship with any significant other and you're in the heat of the moment of some kind of argument, let's call it what it is for the moment, that people are 80+%, I can't remember the exact number, more ready to look for a solution as soon as they feel heard. So sometimes all you've got to do is hold space for them, let them rant, let them get it off their chest, let them see that you've heard and understood them. Doesn't mean that you agree, just heard and understood them, and then they're ready to have a conversation. So that's what I'm hearing as the living embodiment of that. I'd like to now unpack that and go, what about grievance handling? So sometimes people have a legitimate grievance where they do feel aggrieved, and other times you're probably sitting there going, really? Is that your biggest problem today? And they're going on some kind of rant. But like you said, you don't know what has happened in their life that morning, the day before. They might be having the worst day of their life the day that they've come into your restaurant or your business, and this is just an explosion of something that I'm sure having too much ketchup on their burger is not really earth-shatteringly important, but it is for them at that very moment. So how do you manage grievances?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, the person brings the grievance to your attention. And the first thing you want to say is you want to use these two words, tell me. So I think what you need to do is an inquiry versus a question, instead of what's wrong, because when you say what's wrong, it's almost like you're admitting something's wrong. And it may not, to your point, may not be wrong yet, but you say, oh, tell me what I can do. Tell me how I can help you. Tell me what's going on, some kind of tell me thing in there. And so then you listen to that. I think a very big big part of that is to do a little bit of mirroring back. So you would say, so what I heard you say is this happened, this happened, this happened, this is going on. And then you ask a close-ended question. Did I get that right? And they say yes. You say, okay, good. All right. So sometimes we need time to think about how we're going to help this person. I think a lot of times folks feel under the gun to fix it in that moment. But I do want to say this, if you don't know how to fix it in the moment, you simply say, so I'm going to need a minute to think about what it is that you've shared with me, and like either remove yourself or put them on hold or whatever the scenario is, and then think through what options you do have to help that person. And if you do know how to fix it in the moment, you simply say, I'm glad I heard you correctly. And so what I want to do is I want to take care of you. And here's what my plan is. I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then ask them another close-ended question, which is, would that be acceptable? Would that solve the problem? Right. And so, I think too, you do it with this heart and soul of customer service, and people can feel it. If the person is not a nice person and they're just trying to, take advantage of you or whatever, you'll know as well. I'm putting off a vibe that I want to help you. And I can pick up the vibe of somebody who wants to be helped. And I can pick up the vibe of somebody who's trying to take advantage of me. Right. So if somebody's trying to take advantage of me, then I need to trust that. Because again, if you're operating from your soul or your gut, you say, and that's what I'm able to do. And I'd like to start right now to take care of that. And then you do what you can at that point.
So what I'm loving here, Nicole, is that you're not guessing. And I'm going to borrow some words of another dear friend of mine now, Matt Lohmeyer. So Matt Lohmeyer is a professionally certified negotiation coach. He's forgotten more about negotiation than most people know. He's just incredible in his field. And one of the things that he teaches is around grievance handling. So what I love, two parts of what I love. The first one is you're repeating back what you're hearing from the person so that they feel heard and they feel understood. But then you're saying, tell me more. What can I do that could resolve this to your satisfaction? You didn't use those exact words. They're closer to what Matt would say. He would say something along the lines of, how can I resolve this to your full satisfaction? Something along those lines. And you're not guessing. Now, here's a story I'm going to share. This happened this week, right? So in Australia this week, there was a Jetstar flight coming from, I'm going to say it was Indonesia, and it was flying through Alice Springs and had to have an emergency landing because of someone had a medical incident on the flight. But here's where it starts to unfold. For all kinds of reasons, and we won't unpack that today, the people were stuck on a tarmac for 8 hours without food. They were getting drinks, they were getting water and coffee and a few things like this. They weren't being fed, they weren't being, I'm going to say, well informed about what was going on. So here you got a plane full of people that are aggrieved. Now, this could go all kinds of ways because airlines, they can reward people. The airline could turn around, and there was someone on the news that proactively said, you better not do this, by the way. Imagine that all of those people eventually get to Melbourne, which was their eventual destination, and the airline is so apologetic, which they weren't, by the way, but imagine that the airline's so apologetic and say, oh, so sorry for your inconvenience. We're going to give you a free flight on Jetstar to anywhere that you want to go. Do you really think those people, after sitting on a tarmac, want to get on a Jetstar flight again? Not anytime soon. So you got to be careful that if you're guessing what would help the aggrieved party, you might actually be making it worse. It's like, okay, so you didn't like the ride on our roller coaster today. I'm so sorry. Here, have 3 more rides. It's like you're kind of missing the point. So asking that question, tell me, how can we satisfy this to your satisfaction? And then they feel like they're in control and you're not second guessing. You're not going to miss the mark with something that's going to actually make it worse. How does that sit with you, Nicole?
I think that's genius. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that people when they come with a grievance, I think they've already got it in their mind what they want, So again, you said the thing about the hamburger with the ketchup. He could be like, I just want to leave. I don't want my hamburger. I don't want to pay for anything. I want to go. And you could say, okay, have a great day, and whatever. And or they go, or they want a new hamburger, or they want the whole table to have a fresh meal because one person's not eating and everybody else is eating. Whatever it is that they want. Typically, I think that organizations don't do a great job letting their employees know how to handle grievances. So I'm glad we're talking about this. I think it's very good. And what their boundaries are. But there are organizations that do. And so the Ritz-Carlton, which you may be familiar with, it's a very fancy place. And they have a policy where they have guests. When one of their guests comes to them and has an issue, anybody from the housekeeper to the general manager of that location of that site has a budget limit within which they can operate so they can make things better immediately. And I think that that's a very important conversation. And it's part of that employee life cycle, knowing what is our customer philosophy? How do we treat them? How do we fix grievances, to your point? So I think this is all part of building a vibrant culture. If you work somewhere and you're very clear about who the customer is, what they deserve, what our philosophy is, and you're glad to give it, you're glad to do it, it's going to be an awesome business.
Joseph Michelli has written about the Ritz-Carlton a lot. Yeah, this is brilliant. And this is it. It's then the culture of that team, the empowerment of that team, the training of that team that then results in the most amazing experience for those guests, whether they've had a grievance like we're talking about before that gets resolved in an instant, or whether it's just their whole experience with the Ritz-Carlton brand. And this is where I want to bring us to a crescendo here coming towards vibrant culture, is all of those people in your team are a reflection of your brand, right? So your brand is not what you say it is, it's what other people say it is. Their experience with you and your team that gives them, and pardon the pun when it comes to restaurants, do they leave your restaurant with a bad taste in their mouth, or do they leave going, we're coming back here for the next birthday celebration, or we're Friday date night, we're going back to that restaurant because we had such a great time. So tell me about the importance of the culture of the team compared to how it projects outwards as a projection of your brand.
Yeah. So you used a great word a minute ago. You said people feel empowered if they work at the Ritz-Carlton. And so just look at the word empowered. The word power is in there, which means that these employees are lit up. They're plugged in. They know what's going on, right? And so I think that is essentially it. So I am a huge believer in onboarding people and having an onboarding process that lasts a year versus one day. So I want you to, 365 times your onboarding process. If you have a one-day onboarding process, you might be like, well, Nicole, what are you talking about? I mean, I think there's at least 365 things that people need to know about working for your organization, if not even more. So when you hire a person, first of all, there's the recruiting process. And the recruiting process starts all the way with whatever job placement ad you put out there and continues all the way through to the dynamic between their manager and themselves, the rest of the team and themselves, and then about the work that they're doing that makes the vision a reality. So when I think about a vibrant culture, I'm talking about everybody is getting their light turned on, right? Like nobody's in the dark. We have transparency and clarity about where we're going. Everybody is held to a certain level of excellence, which I call integrity. So there's a vision of where we're going, the leadership, the integrity of each person, and then this idea that you're here because we're going to transform the world with our products and services, and we're going to transform you. You're going to become part of this team. So I like to say a vibrant culture is full of people who get lit.
Oh, I love this. And then if someone's lit up, if they are lit, they're going to feel energized. They're going to feel enabled. They're going to feel empowered, and they're going to go off and represent you and your brand in a way that you would be proud. That's what I'm hearing there, Nicole. All right, so let's unpack it all. And I do want to get into that recruiting part and that onboarding part. That was pretty amazing. So tell us more. Tell me more about why the word vibrant. What does the word vibrant mean to you?
Okay. Well, can I tell you where it comes from? How I got there? Yeah. So when I was going through a training program, and I'm a lifelong learner, everybody who has a vibrant culture has a whole group full of lifelong learners because there's nothing else. There's change coming our way. And so we all have to learn and love to learn. And so I was taking a training course, and the master coach who was over the training course, he had us do this closing ceremony, Mick. It was so great. And at the end, he said, I'm going to give you one other person in this group. And based on your experience of them. So that's one of my most powerful questions I ask people, Mick. What is it like to experience you? That's my favorite question for leaders, because I want them to turn the mirror inward and look at what's it like to be led by you. This is a huge issue. So they said, we're going to pick this. So the person in my training group picked my name, Nicole Greer, and they had a day to kind of meditate on, okay, if I could only pick one word for Nicole, what would I pick? And they picked this word, vibrant. And when I got it, it was like a gift. gift. And it still is. This is like this amazing gift to me that somebody gave me this word. And so I'm like, oh, that's that energy I have that people are constantly commenting on, is this vibrancy. And to your point, when you said earlier, people who get lit, they're full of energy. And I think that is what we want to do with our people. People talk about getting motivated. It's a little bit like that, but it's not just an external or extrinsic motivation, that, you're listening to this podcast, maybe Mick is inspiring you and motivating you from the outside, but people who are vibrant are intrinsically motivated. And so it's the combination of the two. People want to be excellent, and that's where that real desire to give quality customer service feels authentic. I mean, you can feel their want. And then they're in an environment that keeps stoking that internal fire. So we hire people who are lit, and then we put logs on their fire the whole time that they work for us so that they stay lit and they become even more vibrant.
To me, that feels like the collision of values and beliefs and the congruence of purpose. That's what it sounds like to me. So you were talking before about giving people vision, giving people clarity of purpose, giving people that environment, but then it's the values and beliefs that are then colliding, because if you're picking people that, are you picking them? Are you attracting them? You're attracting people that believe in the things that you believe, then you're giving them the environment where they can flourish. You're pointing them in the general direction of the vision, and before you know it, magic can happen. And when that intrinsic and extrinsic motivations line up, that's when magic can happen and people can go, we always use these terms, above and beyond. Well, those discretionary effort levels get unlocked when intrinsic values and extrinsic motivation line up. How does that sit with you?
I think you're exactly right. When I was saying about the job placement ad, so if you were to look at a job placement ad that I would put out there, so one of the things I do in Build a Vibrant Culture is I help people with their recruiting efforts. A lot of times people don't have a huge HR component, human resources component of their organization. And so their human resources people are very busy. They're doing everything from payroll to recruiting to counseling, coaching, whatever's on the agenda for today or whatever popped on the agenda in the last 5 minutes. My HR people are my favorite people. I love you, HR people. But when I do recruiting, what I do is I'll place an ad, and it is not a job description. And one of the biggest mistakes that companies make is they'll just take like the job description, which is usually outdated and not even really what the job is anymore. Everything's morphing like mad. And they post it out there and they say, we're looking for an account manager. The account manager must be able to do whatever. So it's not very dynamic. It's not very exciting. Now, if I place a job placement ad, it has like 7 or 8 questions to begin, and they're all close-ended. And the reason why I do that is because, like you said, I'm trying to attract, and then I'm going to pick, right? So I'm trying to attract people that can say yes, 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 yes to these questions. And so one of them might be, do you absolutely love customer service? And like the word absolutely has to be in there. And so if the person goes, yes, and then they read the next question, it says, do you enjoy working with your coworkers and being part of a team? Yes. And then we go down through, do you love working independently, but also easily take direction and correction? Yes. So I want all of these things to be answered yes. Now, here's what happens. There are some very vibrant people out there that will read that and go, oh, this is it, because they see this level of excellence in those questions. Now, there are other people that read those questions and be like, this is weird. This is stupid. And they go on. And it's like, bye-bye.
It's not for them. That's okay. Yeah.
That's okay. We're not trying to attract you. We're trying to attract these people that go, yes, yes, yes. And that's typically what happens. And then we begin to take them through the interview process. And again, that interview process has to be very robust and has to delve into, tell me about a time you worked independently. Tell me about a time you took corrections. Tell me about a time that you were told to change your ways, and see if they can back up saying yes when they answered the ad, right? And so, we're doing very long interviews and being very picky. So your thing about picking, I'm all about being very picky. I'd rather have the job remain open than be desperate and hire somebody who doesn't fit. And I think that's a big mistake that's going on out there right now.
All right, that's great. So we're attracting and we're picking the right people now. Then I want to get into this 365-day onboarding. I'm already falling in love with that. And one of the things I've got to say is most companies do a terrible job of onboarding. Sometimes it doesn't exist at all. Other times you drink from a fire hose for one day or 1 week and then that's it. You let go into the wide world. But I'm hearing 365 days. Tell us about why 365.
Yeah. So, when I say 365, what I'm saying is that, once you get through maybe like the HR or the training process, depending on how you've got the initial onboarding done, you have been assigned to a manager or a leader who is actually going to continue to onboard you and work with you. So I'm a big believer in employee performance management. I'm not a big believer in employee performance reviews once a year after you've had 365 days and then you figure out you were doing stuff wrong. I'm a big believer, though, in getting constant feedback throughout the entire process. And here's the thing, Mick, if I hired you to come work for me and I sat you down on day 1 and day 2 and on and on and on, and I said to you, here's my job. I'm a leader. My job is to develop you. And on my watch, that's going to happen. We're going to pull the full potential out of you, Mick. Now, here's what I think people think at the beginning of a new role or a new job is they're like, wow, this person cares about me and is going to develop me. Now, a very smart person, a vibrant person understands that when you're developed, you're more valuable. And when you're more valuable, you get more opportunity, you get more pay, you get more bonus, you get more everything, more attention. Okay. So you have to do this wonderful job of onboarding so that people will stay in the want to learn mode. And I call that willingness. And so here's my definition of willingness. You want to develop people in your organization to have the character trait of willingness, which is this: without reservation, refusal, or judgment, they will do what needs to be done. So I'm going to say that one more time because it's so stinking good. So willingness is the ability to do what needs to be done without reservation, refusal, or judgment. And so I sit with you. So when I say 365, you may not, because of travel or your schedule or whatever, be able to work with an individual every single day to onboard them. But a week doesn't go by where you haven't sat down or at least made a phone call. And I do mean like a human exchange. I'm not talking about being on Slack, email, or voicemail, or any of the mails and the Teams and the stuff. I'm talking about actually having a conversation with your employee to see, really answer to 3 things. What's going on? What roadblocks did you run into? And how can I help you? You got to do that at least once a week, to get people through the process of getting onboarded into your company. And you'll build that willingness in them. And just to give you an example, when I was in the restaurant business and the apartment business, I cleaned up after people. I mean, literally, like in bathrooms, parking lots, swimming pools. I mean, people do some really icky things. And I've cleaned it all up in my lifetime because I cared about the company. I cared about the product. I cared about making a good impression. So you got to clean stuff up. So it's without reservation, refusal, or judgment that you just do what needs to be done. And if I feel like my leader is loving all over me, I'm going to do anything they ask me to. And at some point, please don't miss this, everybody, without being asked, I'm going to clean it up.
So I've lost count of how many things I loved about that, Nicole. So let me play back some of my takeaways from it. The first thing I love is that to me, it's embracing micro-learning. So instead of expecting someone to be able to master every element of their role in that first week, you're actually giving them daily essential coaching and enabling them the space to learn and grow. So it's embracing micro-learning, and trying to get someone to master their job in 1 week is unrealistic. Doing it over an extended period of time, they're going to grow and they're going to improve 1% every day doing that approach. The second one, fully agree with you. It's completely unfair to give someone an annual performance review and then play back to them all of the things that they did, even right and wrong, the things that they've done for the last year. Because if they've done the right things, you should be celebrating and rewarding that on the spot so that they know, oh, I did a good thing today. And if they're doing the wrong things, you should be correcting it immediately, not 12 months later. So that would be the second one. The next one is, I do love this thought about willingness and this thing about without reservation, refusal, or judgment. It's really good. And yeah, I can imagine, the exact opposite of that would be when something like someone has to clean up a swimming pool and their initial thought when they look at it, that's not my job. It's not in my job description. But if you've ingrained this culture to them, they're just going to do it. They're not even going to be told to do, like you said. They're just going to turn around and do it. The next thing I love is that you're showing the person that you care about them. You use the word care. You're showing them that you see them, you're showing them that you hear them, and you're showing them that they matter to you. And that is then, we spoke before about attracting people. We're now delving over into retaining people. And when you treat people like they've been seen, heard, and that they matter, they're going to stick around. How does that sit with you in terms of the reflection? Lovely. I love this 365. I'm going to walk away with that one for the next few days and think about.
Oh, you're making me so happy, Mick.
What I can do to bottle that one up. That one's beautiful, Nicole. Okay, so we are talking about now having the right people on the bus. You've attracted the people, you've picked the people, you've onboarded the people to make sure you do have the right people on the bus, but you're not going to get it right every time, Nicole. So what happens when you do have someone, despite all your best attempts, what happens when you haven't got it right and you've got someone that's not sitting well with the culture?
So my line is, you coach them in or you coach them out. That's my line on that one. And people are very good actors and actresses. So you will have, as my daddy would say, somebody hoodoo you, meaning they will pull the wool over your eyes or whatever. And so, some people, it's just like, well, I interviewed them, I did everything right. And then you're just almost like, you got to take your glasses off. You're like, what is happening? So it's bizarre when that happens. But my philosophy is you got to coach them in or you got to coach them out. And what I mean by that is, again, sitting down with them, explaining to them who their stakeholders are. So I mentioned employee performance management just a minute ago. And one of the things I do in my company is I help leaders get this employee performance management in place, because unfortunately, people are out there, are managing and leading people, and they have technical expertise, and they were promoted to manager because they know how a certain process runs or a certain procedure is done or a technical thing is done, but they haven't ever managed people before. And so they've got to have training around how to have these conversations. And then I give them a set of tools that helps them do employee performance management. And one of the questions they need to, or one of the things they need to understand, and the question that you ask them is, who are your stakeholders? Meaning, who has a stake in your success? And so a lot of times this is the first time employees have ever heard this word stakeholder, first of all. And second of all, they thought that it was all about them. And what we're about to do is tell them, no, it's all about we. And so you're going to show them who their stakeholders are. And we coach the employee or the associate to say, well, what do they expect from you, do you think? So we don't just go smile at them, do this, do that. We ask them, what do you think? And people know. Make people know what is expected. You got to get them to declare it, though, instead of telling. So you ask them and they say, well, this is what my stakeholders expect from me. If they miss a little something, you can add it. But then it's very clear. Here's what your stakeholders are expecting from you. So the owner of the company, your coworkers, the actual customers, there's all sorts of stakeholder groups. And then you set goals with your employee to achieve between the different meetings that you have. And I suggest to people is to have quarterly goals. So we sit down and we goal set 4 times a year around what you need to give to the stakeholder. So let's say somebody is not living up to these goals, then you already have it all mapped out. It's very easy for you as a leader to say, here's the goals we set for this quarter. And here's, your KPIs, your key productivity indicators, and you're not meeting these. And this is the 365 part. And I've checked in with you and asked you, how's it going? What roadblocks did you run into? Because really the leader's job is to hold people accountable, coach them, and remove obstacles. And then how can I help you? Now, if a leader truly feels like they've done all of that, you already have all your documentation to let this person go. You don't have to start the documentation process with HR to get them out the door. You've been doing it all along. You're doing it all along. Okay. Now, I just want to say one more thing. Now, if you've got employee performance management in place, you're set. You're totally set. You can fire people when you're ready because you already have the documentation that says it's time for them to go, or you've got proof that they deserve the highest raise the company will allow. Now, here's the thing about people who are not doing well. You can't let them stay because your good employees are smart enough to know that person should not be on the team. And listen to this. You'll lose all of their credibility, or the credibility that you have with the good employees, because you are not getting rid of them, and you will become a joke. And that is the truth.
So one of the sayings that we have here around the show is you get the behavior that you celebrate, reward, and tolerate. What you're talking about here is, yes, celebrate and reward as you go. But if you tolerate that behavior that's not in line with the values of the team, people notice. And then they do one of 3 things, Nicole. When they notice it, they either go, well, Jim got away with it, so I'm going to do it too. They start mimicking it. Or they get so incensed by that behavior that they either quit and go, I cannot believe that Jim got away with that, I'm out of here. Or they quiet quit. They go, I cannot believe that Jim got away with that, so I'm going to pull back. I'm going to go within myself. I'm going to do the bare minimum now because I can't believe that Jim got away with that. Sorry, Jim, if there's any Jims in the audience, first name that popped into my head, right? So yeah, you get the behavior that you celebrate, reward, and you tolerate. There were so many things I loved about what you were saying before there. So my big takeaways were it's about performance management, not performance reviews. It's about having those conversations, about conversational intelligence. It's about a we conversation. It's not about a you or an I conversation. It's about a we conversation. It's about co-creating the goals of what you're going to achieve. It's about asking better questions, not telling someone what to do, but asking them the better questions so that they take some ownership of what they're going to achieve this quarter or this week or whatever your cycle is going to be. And then I love the part, and I've worked in, multinational corporations, Nicole, and the first question you ever get asked by HR, if you do need to move someone on, is, okay, we're going to have to put them under performance management for 3 months and give them the chance to correct it. But what I'm hearing from you is if this is not the first time they've heard the feedback, you've got ample evidence essentially. Well, no, actually, this person's behavior they've been told on week 1, on week 4, on week 6, on week 9. This is the 5th time we've had this conversation. No, they've had ample chance to correct this already. Really interesting.
Yeah. And you've heard this probably before, hire slow and fire fast. And if you do employee performance management, you can do that. Because 6 weeks in, you're like, this is not doing it because we set goals. I wrote it down. It's all documented, and anymore, bigger companies and even smaller companies can afford to have HR solution software and things like that allow you to keep track of things very, very simply. You don't have to have a lot of paper laying around. You can do it all, in a system. There's Paylocity, all these payroll companies have all sorts of learning and management softwares built into them.
Yeah, very good. Workday is probably the most prolific one at the moment, and it's got all of that in there if you use it properly. And what we're now creating is we're creating ceremonies, mini ceremonies along the way where you're celebrating and rewarding the behavior that you want, and you're addressing the behavior you're not tolerating, the behavior that you don't want. And when I say don't tolerate, it's not instant dismissal. It's about bringing it to their attention and seeing how they respond. And if they can correct it, great. We remain friends and we keep going forever. If they don't correct it, they get told again, and before you know it, we're having a different conversation. Yeah, really good, Nicole. There's one other element. There's a ribbon that is threaded through our conversation today that I want to reflect back to you, which is a mindset one. You've said at least 2 or 3 times, maybe even more in today's conversation, that I'm a leader and this is my job. And I feel like that's a big mindset shift that a lot of new leaders don't make. They have part of their brain that says to them that leadership is part of their job, whereas what I'm hearing from you, Nicole, is leadership is your job. And when we make that mindset shift to having these conversations is not, that's the part of the job I don't like. It is your job to have those conversations, to coach people, to mentor people, to develop people. That is your job. It's not part of your job. It is your job. How does that sit with you?
That is correct, everybody. Write that down. I mean, that's the bottom line. And, a lot of people tell me, well, I'm a working manager, and that we've, taken out layers of leadership and that kind of thing. We've flattened organizations. I know all of that is happening. However, I will say this, that your job is to really get almost everything off your plate except for leading the people, especially the higher you go in the organization. Your job is to sit with the genius that you have inside of your organization and talk with them about the strategy that you have. Maybe part of your job is the strategy, but here's the thing. No strategy, everybody, 0 strategy is going to get done without people. That's how it works. If we raptured all the people in your company off the planet this afternoon, nothing's going to get done. You might have the most amazing product lying around. You own a BMW dealership. That's what popped in my mind. And so that's great. That's the best, what do they call it? The something driving experience, the ultimate driving experience, I think. And so that's great. Don't have anybody to show the product. Don't have anybody to ring up the sale. Don't have anybody to clean the cars. And so it doesn't matter. So the more you go up the ladder in your leadership role, it is all about people. And I would share a quick story if I may, Mick. Can I share a story about a leader? Okay. So I had this leader and he confessed to me. He said, I just got to be honest, Nicole, I don't like working with people. And I'm like, well, today you get to start. Now, earlier we were talking about being authentic in your desire to help people. And I said, well, first it goes in your head as intellectual knowledge, and then it drops in your heart, and then it drops in your soul, and it gets integrated, or you become a man or woman of integrity around that issue. And that's what I told this leader. I said, well, congratulations. Today you get to start liking people. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yes, you get to choose that today. Choose it, because your people run this company for you. I mean, he didn't interact with frontline employees and he didn't interact with frontline customers, but he has to start trying to become that person today. So it's an intellectual thought. Now, does that make sense to everybody? That leaders need to be people? Yes, it makes sense. So think about it. Think about it until it drops down in your heart and you go, oh, that's truth. See, when it's in your heart, you're like, oh, that's the truth. And then it drops down in your belly and it's like, I live the truth. So that's what I'm talking about when I say it drops down. It's like one day you wake up and you go, oh, truth. So you can't not do it anymore. It's like you have integrated it, and then you get in your belly and it's like you learn to love people. And the thing is I think this gentleman, he was always like a number cruncher, number person, always had number jobs and got promoted to the top seat. But at that point, you've got some other guy and some other gal crunching the numbers, and that's really good work, and it's got to be done. We got to know where we stand. We got to be in the black. We got to make a profit. We got to give back to the shareholders. I get it. The P&L rules, kinda. But the only reason those numbers get on the P&L is because somebody produced them. So income, somebody made a sale and delivered customer service. Expenses, somebody got 3 bids, vetted the vendors, oversaw the work, made sure it got done right. And then we have the NOI, the net operating income. That's all produced by humans. And so that is, I hope you hear that. That's got to get in your heart. So I got to understand that, but I got to have really great humans who care. So again, you said the swimming pool. I mean, I could tell you some stuff that happens in swimming pools. I bet you your imagination out there, but clean up the swimming pool, because if we have a customer come today to go look at the model home and they see a nasty swimming pool, we won't have a sale, we won't have revenue, etc.
Yeah, done. And that now people are starting to see the meaning and impact of what they do when they can see that bigger picture. So all businesses are people business. And if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. That's as simple as that. Yes, there's 3 dimensions of leadership. There's leading yourself, there's leading the team, and there's leading the business. So of course, you've got to have your finger on the pulse of the P&L. But if you ignore the leading self and you ignore the leading people, you've got no business to manage, right? So
yeah. So can I add to that?
Yeah, go.
So just real quick, the part about the P&L and everything. So, you said leading yourself and leading others. So I'm a huge believer in business acumen. And Nancy Freeman, the gal that I mentioned earlier, she taught me, a non-college graduate at the time. Now I have my master's degree, but back then I didn't have nothing. I had a little high school diploma that I got out of there as fast as I could. She taught me, this is when you make this choice, we get this. This is how it hits the P&L. So I just wanted to combine that. So in that 365 onboarding, it's teaching people all that little business stuff, because they may have no idea. They could be just like little old Nicole Greer, didn't know nothing. So you have to explain everything to me.
Not understanding that impact between my action here impacts the cost basis here, or my action here impacts our revenue here. Everyone needs an education in that. And then you can bring the people and the P&L together and do something amazing. Very good, Nicole. And there's that reframing, because, that thing that I'm just not a people person, that's a fixed mindset. And with reframing, you can become something that you can not only learn, you can actually learn to love it as you progress. Very good, Nicole. Now, that brings us to a close today. So many great takeaways, but I'd love to go into our rapid round. So first question, what's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
How important a college degree can be to getting you where you want to go. So, unfortunately, I did pretty good. Fortunately and unfortunately, I did pretty good in both the restaurant business and in property management. But, I had a lot of people tell me, you're doing so good. Why do you need to go to school? So I got a lot of bad advice, a lot of bad comments. And I wish I'd have got that done a lot earlier. I didn't go back to school till I was 42. So I finally got both my kids, one on the bus and one off to college. And I got my college degree done. And then I went and got a master's degree. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying this. I loved getting my master's degree because the content was so useful to my work. And they treated me like an adult. And the work that I was doing, getting that degree, I could apply it to my clients immediately. So it was so rich. And I had so many people that thought, at at my age, which at the time, 42 is not old, people. Hello. But they're like, why would you spend all that money and time doing that? It was such bad advice from so many. So I wish I would have just taken one class at a time when I was 20, but I didn't do it.
42 is definitely not old because I'm 49 and I'm not old now.
That's right. And I'm 56 and I'm really young.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Very good. What's your favorite book?
Oh my gosh. I told you earlier when we were talking, this is an unfair question because my books are my babies. I love them so much. But I would say probably two books are my favorites. One is a book called Simple Abundance by Sarah Van Brethnick, and it is a daily reader. And I've read it every day for about 12 years. I just can't get enough of that thing. So every morning I crack it open and I read it again. It's so rich. And she is such a delightful writer. And and every day she tells me how I can do anything I set my mind to. So I love Sarah. So I love that book. And then the other book I love, and that one's kind of written for ladies, but if I was to hand a fella a book, I would give him The Alchemist by Paul Coelho. I adore The Alchemist. In fact, whenever like a nephew or somebody, a neighbor graduates or something, I buy that book for them. I'm like, read this. And I hope they do.
Very good. All right. What's your favorite quote?
So my favorite quote comes from one of the master coaches in my life. So I try to surround myself with a lot of genius because, the old Jim Rohn saying, you're the product of the 5 people you hang around. So, I'm hanging around with Mick. I'm hanging around with Don. So Don Carroll says setting proper expectations with people is huge. And this is what he said. Uncommunicated expectations are a premeditated opportunity to be disappointed. That's my favorite quote.
Oh, wow. I love it.
Reason why, isn't it great? It's so stinking good. And leaders, they're like, we're not getting the results we need. And why don't people do? And blah, 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 and quiet quitting and all this kind of stuff. Okay, well, you can sit around and complain about all that stuff all you want. It will just be a complete waste of energy. Or you can get out there and set proper expectations. And, the part about doing employee performance management and getting that in place will eliminate uncommunicated expectations, which are a premeditated opportunity to be disappointed.
Yeah, brilliant, Nicole. All right. Finally, there's going to be people that are truly enthralled with everything that you've shared today. How do people get in contact with you if they'd like to know more about building a vibrant culture?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you. So, of course, you can go to my website, which is vibrantcoaching.com. But we do more than coaching. That's where I started. But we do coaching, consulting, we do recruiting, we do tons of training. So I'd love to do any of that with you all. And then you can call me at 704-502-4953. That's my direct line. That's my cell phone. Call me. Or you can reach me at Nicole, Nicole, at vibrantcoaching.com.
We will put those information in the show notes as well. And we have a very international audience. So just with that cell number, make sure you put +1 on the front if you're dialing from outside the US. All right. Thank you, Nicole. This has been such a pleasure having you on the show. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I know the audience will as well. So thank you so much for your time and continue to help those organizations to build those vibrant cultures where everyone can feel heard, seen, and that what they do has an impact and means something.
Thank you, Mick. It's been a delight. I'm grateful for your time.
Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mixbeers.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spears. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.